Hello, and welcome to our channel, Shakespeare's Plays and Summaries, where we go over the works of William Shakespeare. Be sure to subscribe and check out our library of videos. Today, we tell the story of Antony and Cleopatra, one of Shakespeare's most renowned tragedies. What if I told you that the fate of the entire known world once hinged on a single legendary love affair? You'd probably think it's just a story, right? Well, in the world of Antony and Cleopatra, that passion wasn't just a romance. No, it was a geopolitical earthquake, threatening to rip the Roman Empire right apart at the seams. You see, this story is so much more than a love story. It's a high-stakes, knockdown, drag-out power struggle where personal desire and imperial duty collide with absolutely catastrophic force. And at the very heart of it all is this epic clash of two worlds. You've got the rigid, cold discipline of Rome on one side and the lush, intoxicating luxury of Egypt on the other. The scale of the ego and the excess here, it's just staggering. And the consequences? Well, they're going to be brutal. So let's meet our main guy, Mark Antony. He is one of the three men ruling the entire Roman world, a triumvir. But this legendary general, he's changed. He's over in Egypt, completely captivated by the mesmerizing Queen Cleopatra. And his own soldiers, they're watching in disgust as their great leader becomes, in their words, a strumpet's fool, blowing off his duties for parties and pleasure. Now, the dynamic here is just fascinating. Antony is this larger-than-life character, all charisma and appetite, a warrior who just thrives on excess. In Cleopatra, she's his perfect match, a queen of, quote, infinite variety, who uses her beauty and her brilliant mind to keep the most powerful man in the world wrapped around her finger. But then a crisis hits and Rome pulls him back. The news that arrives from Rome is like a bucket of ice water. First, Antony's wife, Fulvia, is dead. And get this, she died leading a rebellion against his co-ruler Octavius Caesar. On top of that, a pirate named Sextus Pompey is getting powerful and threatening the empire's entire grain supply. It's a total mess. So, the writing is on the wall. Antony knows he has to break his Egyptian fetters, as he calls them, or he's going to lose everything. He leaves Egypt, promising a heartbroken and furious Cleopatra that, don't worry, his heart is still with her. So, Antony heads back to Rome. And let me tell you, the atmosphere is absolutely ice cold. He is about to walk into a new, high-stakes political gambit just to save his own skin. He has to face Octavius Caesar, a man who is his polar opposite. I mean, Caesar is young, he's calculating, he's obsessed with order. And he sees Antony's behavior not just as irresponsible, but as a personal and political insult. To stop a civil war from breaking out, their colleague Lepidus helps them broker a deal. And to seal this new peace, Antony agrees to a political marriage with Caesar's own sister Octavia. It's a move of pure strategy, of course, but you just know it's a ticking time bomb. And you know who calls it from a mile away? Antony's own friend, Enobarbus. He's the cynical, observant guy who basically says, yeah, right. He famously predicts Antony will never, ever stay away from Egypt, describing Cleopatra as so magnificent that she beggared all description. And that brings us to the breaking point. This fragile peace, which they sealed with drunken feasts on pirate ships, where the rulers of the world nearly get their throats slit, well, there was no way it was going to last. As soon as Antony is out of sight, the old cravings come back. And then he starts hearing things. He hears Caesar is already pushing their buddy Lepidus aside, that he's bad-mouthing Antony in the Senate. He feels his power, his space in Rome, just shrinking. And that's it. He snaps. Antony makes the fatal decision. He returns to Egypt, returns to Cleopatra, and in doing so, he officially breaks his treaty and his marriage to Octavia. The line has been crossed. For Caesar, this is the perfect excuse. He is done with diplomacy. He uses Antony's return to Egypt to paint him as a traitor to Rome, a man who threw it all away for a foreign queen. And so, we get to the climax, a battle for the entire world. Caesar mobilizes the Roman war machine with terrifying speed. And Antony? Oh, Antony. Urged on by Cleopatra and his own massive ego, he ignores the advice of his generals to fight on land, where he's strongest. Instead, he agrees to a massive sea battle at a place called Actium. A terrible mistake. And I am not being dramatic when I say this. The Battle of Actium is one of the great turning points of history. Everything is on the line. So in the heat of the fight, something unbelievable happens. Cleopatra's 60 ships, they just turn and flee. Just like that, a huge part of their navy is gone. And then, in an act that shocks the entire world, Antony, the legendary general, abandons his own men, his own fleet, and he follows her. Think about that. He chooses his passion over his honor. He leaves his men to be slaughtered or captured. The fallout from this single decision is immediate and absolutely catastrophic. The Roman world is just stunned. With Antony's forces crushed, the cold, relentless march of Octavius Caesar now heads straight for Alexandria. The party is officially over, the war is lost, and all that's left is the fallout. So, let's see just how this epic story comes completely unraveled. Yeah, and in tatters is, well, that's putting it mildly, isn't it? This is the hero of 1,000 battles, the great Mark Antony. And he literally turned his back on his own men at Actium just to chase after Cleopatra's ship. It was a catastrophic failure, not just on the battlefield, but for his entire identity as a Roman. So back in Alexandria, oh boy, the vibe has definitely changed. What was once the scene of this legendary non-stop party has turned into a desperate, frantic bunker. You can just feel the shadow of the victorious Caesar getting closer and closer. And our two lovers, they're trapped. And you can see right here just how differently they're handling this whole disaster. Antony is he's a wreck. He's so consumed by shame that he's telling his best friends to just leave him, to go make their own deals with Caesar. The man is completely falling apart. But Cleopatra? Ever the survivor. She's already thinking 3 moves ahead, trying to play the game and secure Egypt's future for her kids. But see, Caesar isn't coming for a simple negotiation, oh no. He's playing a much darker, much smarter game. He's playing mind games, trying to drive a wedge right between Antony and Cleopatra and break them from the inside out. And look at this. This is just classic Caesar. His actual goal is pretty clear. He wants to drag Cleopatra through the streets of Rome in chains for his triumph. Total humiliation. But his tactic to get there? It's so sneaky. He sends a messenger to whisper in her ear, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting she could get a better deal if she just got rid of Antony. It is pure manipulation. And boom, it works. Just maybe not exactly how Caesar planned. Antony walks in at the absolute worst possible moment. I mean, can you imagine? He sees this guy, this messenger from his mortal enemy, kissing his queen's hand, and he just snaps. All that shame and insecurity boils over, and he orders the messenger to be whipped. And this line, he screams at her. Wow. He's basically calling her Julius Caesar's leftovers. A hand-me-down. It's so cruel, so personal, and it just shows you how far this great general has fallen. He's been reduced to nothing more than a jealous, wounded lover. And yet, somehow, she pulls him back. That's the power Cleopatra has over him. With just a look, she calms that storm inside him. And in this incredible act of defiance against their fate, they decide to throw one last, epic party. A gaudy night before everything comes crashing down for good. But it's like the world itself is telling them it's over. First, there are these spooky omens. His soldiers hear this strange music coming from under the ground, and they're convinced it's the god Hercules, Antony's own ancestor, literally walking out on him. But the real gut punch? That comes from his most loyal friend, Anobarbus. He leaves. He defects to Caesar's camp. Now, you think Antony would be furious, right? But no. In a flash of the great man he once was, he does something incredible. Instead of cursing him, he sends all of Anobarbus' treasure after him, with his blessing. And the result? It's just devastating. This act of kindness is too much for Anobarbus to handle. The guilt literally breaks his heart, and he dies. Alright, so here we go. The final battle for Alexandria is on. And for just a second, just one glorious fleeting moment, it looks like the old Antony, the legendary warrior, is back. I mean, talk about whiplash. Look at this. One evening, he wins a skirmish. He comes back to Cleopatra, a conquering hero, and it feels like the old days. But then the sun comes up, and he watches his entire fleet, his last real hope, just give up. They surrender to Caesar without even fighting. It's a total, unmitigated disaster. And in that instant, his world just collapses. In his mind, there's only one person to blame. It has to be her, Cleopatra. He's convinced she sold him out. And all that incredible love, it just flips, instantly, into pure, murderous rage. So Cleopatra sees this, she hears his fury, and she is absolutely terrified. She makes a decision in a moment of pure panic, a desperate ploy that is going to seal both of their fates. She runs and locks herself inside her own massive tomb. And then she sends a messenger to Antony with a lie, a fatal lie. She tells him that she has taken her own life. I think she's hoping that maybe this will shock him back to his senses, that he'll feel pity for her instead of rage. And oh, does it backfire. All that rage just poof, it evaporates. And in its place is just this cold, horrible clarity. He realizes that a world without her in it is not a world he wants to live in. Everything. Rome, the empire, life itself. It's all meaningless now. And that's it. That's the decision that kicks off the final, agonizing scene of Antony's life. A true tragedy built entirely on one colossal, fatal misunderstanding. He turns to his loyal servant, Eros, and says this, "Unarm, Eros. The long day's task is done." It's just so final, so resigned. The fight is over. He's going to follow Cleopatra into death. But it's like even his own death won't cooperate with him. It's one final disaster. First, he asks his servant Eros to kill him. But Eros can't bring himself to do it, so he kills himself instead. Then, Antony tries to do it himself, and he botches it. He falls on his sword, but the wound isn't immediately fatal. It's just awful. And then, in the most tragic twist you can imagine, as he's lying there bleeding out, a messenger rushes in. You know what's coming. Cleopatra isn't dead. The lie is revealed. But it is far, far too late. What happens next is one of the most powerful scenes in all of literature. His men carry his dying body to her monument. But she's locked herself in, so she and her mates have to physically haul his heavy, bleeding body up the stone walls. Can you just picture that? The agony, the effort, all for one last desperate moment together. He finally makes it up, and he dies there in her arms. And his last words? They aren't words of love. They're a final warning. One last piece of pragmatic advice, trying to protect her from the man who beat them both. So Antony, the crown of the earth, is gone. And Cleopatra, the legendary queen of Egypt, is now completely alone. She's a captive, a prize for the cold, calculating Caesar. And that leaves us with one final haunting question. What does a queen do when her king is dead and her enemy is at the gates? The stakes could not be higher, and a queen, backed into a corner, is about to make her last, and maybe her greatest, move. So, Mark Antony is dead. And that changes everything. Octavius Caesar is literally at the gates. Cleopatra, the queen of Egypt, finds herself trapped, a prisoner in her own monument, with Roman guards everywhere. But she is not about to let Caesar write the last chapter of her story. No way. Her mind is already racing, crafting a spectacular final exit. And this really makes you wonder, right? When your armies are gone, your love is dead, and your empire is lost, how does a queen, someone seen as a living goddess, choose to face the end? So, Caesar arrives. But he doesn't come in with the fire and fury you'd expect from a conqueror. Oh no, he comes with this smooth, practiced kindness. You know, the kind a predator shows right before the final strike. Just look at the difference between what he says and what she knows is true. On one hand, Caesar's promising her honor, promising her kids will be safe. But Cleopatra is no fool. She sees right through this whole performance. She knows she's not a guest, she's a prisoner. And worse than that, she's a prize, a trophy he plans to show off. So, what is this fate that she's so afraid of? For a woman who lived her entire life as a goddess on earth, it is something far, far worse than death. It's called the Roman triumph. Okay, so you got to understand the triumph wasn't just a victory lap. It was a ritual of pure humiliation. They would literally drag defeated kings and queens through the streets of Rome in chains, forcing them to listen to the crowds jeer and mock them. This is the honor Caesar has in mind for her. She pictures it perfectly, being put on display like some kind of curiosity. This quote just nails the horror of it, becoming an object for the shouting varletry, the common rabble of Rome, to stare at. It would be the ultimate degradation. And here's the thing. She doesn't just guess what Caesar's up to. She gets proof. She brilliantly tests one of the Roman guards, a guy named Dolabella. And he, totally captivated by her, confesses everything. He tells her Caesar plans to parade her through Rome in just 3 days. That's it. That's the confirmation she needed. And this is the moment everything flips. Once she knows the truth, Cleopatra decides that if she can't rule the world with Antony, then she will rule her own death. The victim is gone. Now she's the architect of her own legend. So she moves with absolute precision. This isn't panic, this is a plan. She calls for her finest robes, her crown, all of her jewels. She is going to die looking like the queen who first mesmerized Antony, not some prisoner of Caesar. She's preparing for a truly royal death. And then she says this incredible line, "I have immortal longings in me." See, this isn't about just escaping pain. This is about securing a legacy, about achieving a kind of immortality that Caesar and his legions could never, ever touch. The final piece of the plan arrives in the most unassuming way possible. A local man gets into the monument carrying a basket of figs, but hidden right there under the leaves are several asps, venomous snakes whose bite brings on a quiet, sleep-like death. The instrument of her final escape is here. What happens next isn't just a suicide. It's a performance, a scene of haunting beauty and incredible defiance, staged for all of eternity. She puts on her full royal costume. She kisses her loyal maids Iris and Charmian goodbye. And then in this unbelievable moment of loyalty and sorrow, her maid Iris just falls down and dies from a broken heart before the snakes have even come out. Then, with this quiet, regal calm, Cleopatra takes an ASP and applies it to her breast, and then another to her arm. She's not just dying, she's mocking Caesar's victory, feeling her life slip away completely on her own terms. And listen to how she describes this moment. The snake isn't violent. She calls it a baby at my breast that sucks the nurse asleep. It's incredible. She transforms her own death into this peaceful, almost maternal release, dying quietly as she calls out for Antony. So when the Roman guards finally smash their way in, the scene they find just completely shatters Caesar's plans. There's Cleopatra, dead on her golden throne, dressed perfectly, looking like a queen. Her other maid, Charmian, with her last breath, adjusts the crown on Cleopatra's head, telling the guards that this death was worthy of a great princess. And then Caesar himself walks in. He's there to claim his ultimate prize. And she's gone. All of his military victories in that moment must have felt so hollow. The conqueror of the world was defeated by a spirit he could never ever cage. I mean, the contrast is just so stark. Caesar wanted a living trophy to parade through Rome. Cleopatra became an immortal legend instead. He conquered the physical world, but she won a spiritual victory. He wanted total control, and what she gave him was the ultimate act of defiance. And you know, even in his disappointment, Caesar is moved. He gets it. He orders her to be buried right beside Antony, and his words are basically an admission of defeat. No grave upon the earth shall clip in it a pair so famous. He knows he conquered a world, but he could not conquer this love, this legend. And in the end, that's what we're left with. Rome's victory created an empire that would last for centuries, for sure. But the memory that really sticks, the story that we still tell, it isn't about Caesar's legions. It's the image of a passion that was just too big for the world it lived in. Which leaves us with this one last thought. We always hear that old saying, history is written by the victors. And make no mistake, Caesar was the victor. But what this story shows us is that while victors might get to write the history books, legends are forged by the ones who are brave enough to defy them. That concludes our look at Antony and Cleopatra. Want the full book? Visit the Athenaeum Hub link below.